Everyone, every single app has a huge history behind it, especially when it comes to the stories tied to it. Because people tend to use social media to commit a lot of crimes, like catfishing and blackmailing other people. Most of the time, it's accounts targeting other users to make money out of them. But there are rare cases where they get caught, or the victim can stop it before it happens. But I think the best stories are the ones where a criminal posts evidence of them committing crimes online, which is probably the dumbest thing you can do. And Snapchat tends to be where a lot of stories like these happen, so I found it entertaining to watch a summary of these crimes, as well as the context behind them. And I hope you guys found it interesting as well.
If you're thinking of sharing a naked picture of yourself with someone, don't.
Snapchat is an app used by millions of people across the world, and because of that, there are a lot of scammers and other degenerates that use the platform. So today, we'll uncover a few of these stories. Our first story begins on the other side of the earth when a young man named Charlie Wade arrived in Perth, Australia, as part of a global backpacking trip. The 21-year-old Englishman was alone in an unfamiliar country, but he soon made a local connection when he met a woman online who went by the name Amelia. The two started talking actively on apps like Snapchat, with the attractive young woman gaining the young traveler's trust. As they learned more about each other, the potential sweetheart revealed that she was also from England and was studying close to Charlie's birthplace in Bath. The more they shared about their lives, the closer they grew. Their conversations soon turned intimate, and during one such exchange, Amelia suddenly asked Charlie to send a nude photo. He was surprised, but decided to throw caution to the wind and send the revealing pictures to her. But immediately
I respect that. Someone who sends news to some random girl they just met on Snapchat, it just does not give a shit about safety. And you can already tell by his fucking, I don't know if that's his house, but actually that is where he lives. Who would want you to live in this kind of place surrounded by water? What happens if a wave just comes in one night, just like destroys all of it?
After Amelia received the images, the Englishman quickly discovered that he was caught in a snafu. This is because she instantly sent messages back threatening to send the revealing pics to all of Charlie's Instagram followers. The only thing that would stop her was a €500 bribe. Charlie went through
only 500? It's pretty cheap.
Emotions, shock, disappointment, and soon arrived at overwhelming fear. His instinctive reaction was to send the money to avoid the embarrassment, and he quickly attempted to do so. But fate intervened, and since the transaction was so large, it was rejected. This turned out to be lucky, as once the young man had time to clear his head, he realized that he wasn't as trapped as he thought. You see, Charlie hadn't shown his face in any of the illicit photos, so he decided to call Amelia or whoever was behind the fake profile on their bluff. Charlie blocked the account on all forms of social media, which they had shared over the course of their budding friendship. In the end, the scammer did end up sending the photos to a few of his acquaintances, who he quickly messaged to explain the situation. Rather than let this negative experience derail his trip, Charlie continued to travel around Australia, and started to share his story more openly as he got further away from it. He met—
God bless him. But even if, like what he mentioned before, where you can see his face, the idea of someone that I know personally having a picture of me nude, you know, with my dick out, that would still be really uncomfortable. No matter like how, like, even if I spent like 3 hours explaining that it's not me, or I'm guessing in this situation you would try your best to explain that you were like catfished. But even then, that's just embarrassing. I could never live with that, you know. But I guess this guy, you know, just carrying on with his trip, you know, just having fun. Good on him.
Several other young men who had gone through the same experience, and found out that other con artists would sometimes send the intimate photos out to the victim's family and friends, even if they paid. Some of these men had shelled out triple the amount that had been demanded of Charlie, but couldn't escape the threat.
I still feel like 500 is very generous for how hefty of a hostage they kind of have.
Talking to new people online. Given how convincing a fake profile can be, it makes sense that the victims of such scams would want to keep their interactions rooted in real life afterwards. And sometimes the target of these scams are not as lucky as Charlie, and the fear, pressure, and stress can prove to be too much to handle. The tragic results can be found in cases like that of Ryan Last, a 17-year-old from San Jose, California. In May of 2022, just a few days after visiting some colleges that he was considering, the teen received a message from someone who he believed to be a girl around his age. The conversation quickly grew intimate, as the mysterious girl sent Ryan a nude photo and asked for one in return. Immediately
I
after—
can tell what's in your head. That's one mission now. I saying catfishing is a horrible crime, especially like the first story with that guy in Australia. But I think it is worse to do it to teenagers, because around that age they're in school, and most of the time they do send nudes that they get and like blackmail them with and send it to like people in the school, and that goes like such a huge backlash. It can ruin their lives. So I think it is worse to go after teenagers and ask them for nudes. Plus, not to mention like how much easier teenagers fall in love with people online. So it is just like easy bait. It still doesn't make it any better though.
After he sent the photo, the boy received a familiar demand for money in exchange for the images not being sent to his parents. The scammer was demanding $5,000, which Last was unable to pay. After some shrewd haggling, it was lowered to just $150.
What a deal! Do not have my dick and balls shown to my parents. That's a pretty good deal.
The teenager paid for out of his college savings. But even after sending the cash, the scammers kept demanding more and more, upping the pressure on Ryan until it overwhelmed him, and he only saw one way out. This tragedy unfolded over just a few hours. The boy's mother, Pauline, later shared that she had said goodnight to her son at 10 p.m., and by 2 a.m. the scam had come to a horrifying end. The teenager left a note behind, describing how embarrassed he was for himself and his family. Having been subjected to a level of stress that no one should have to endure, Ryan felt that he couldn't face any outcome of the situation. After writing his final message, the young man took his own life.
That's actually horrible. Holy shit.
But eventually, the internet footprints would be traced. In late December of the same year, a 25-year-old named Jonathan Cassie was arrested in connection to a West African financial extortion scheme that appeared to have targeted the late teenager, with a long prison sentence sure to ensue. This was just one of many sextortion cases plaguing the US. The FBI reported over 18,000 related complaints in 2021, with losses in excess of $13 million. Many of these complaints came from scammers who targeted children specifically, sharing and creating a seemingly bottomless well of illegal material to exploit their trust. But one of the main challenges facing the investigations of these crimes is that so many go unreported, with the victims choosing to endure the fear and shame in silence. The more drastic responses to being scammed, like what happened to Ryan Last, is more common in teenagers because of their still developing brains. According to specialist Dr. Scott Hadlad, it can be difficult for the young victims of an extortion scam to see past the threat, to a point—
That's absolutely true. I didn't even consider like how much easier it is for them to stress out quickly. With an adult like the first guy in the story, he did have some time, even if it was because of the transaction was declined, he did have some time to stop and saying, I haven't shown my face in the picture, so I could easily disprove that was me in those nudes. But with teenagers, I imagine like he did leave some trace of his like identity in the pictures, but even then, if he was willing to like talk with his parents or like report the crime, he could have easily like stopped the guy from sending the pictures. But yeah, like how he said, when teenagers, they get stressed out much quicker, and it is awful like that it ended that way. I feel like horrible. Also, I feel horrible for family as well, but you have to be like a detestable human being to do that as well as a teenager.
Where the release of a nude photo would not have permanent ramifications on their social and personal lives. Hadlad stated that the best way for parents to help their children avoid the scams was to warn them without shame. When a young person is caught in what feels like a life-ruining moment, they need to know that they can talk to someone without facing further shame and justice. The more awareness that these scams get, the less power they can hold over the vulnerable people they target. But this is only the first of many Snapchat stories that we'll be discussing today. While many criminals have stayed safe behind the anonymity of social media platforms like Snapchat due to the ability to have messages vanish after being sent, that very same anonymity can also be their downfall. In the case of Enroy Ruddock, a 19-year-old from the Coventry region of England, the openness with which people are willing to share their lives online proved to lead directly to prison. Ruddock was part of a gang of youths in Canley who were embroiled in a feud with a rival gang from Tile Hill, a neighboring city, including Emmanuel Lukenga, a 21-year-old who would soon become the center of a violent collision between the groups. The Canley youth struck first, setting fire to Lukenga's car after tracking it down on a stolen motorbike, along with a van filled with gas cans. Just minutes after the arson, the crew spotted two of Emmanuel's friends, who ran into a local convenience store as soon as they were seen. CCTV footage from the shop shows Ruddock and his associate, Bradley Richardson, approaching the store with weapons in hand. Richardson carried a large axe, and Ruddock seemed to be hiding something behind his back. But they decided not to attack their rivals in such a public place, returned to their van, and sped off, continuing the hunt for Lukenga. Eventually, the Canley youths found him and some of his friends walking down a street, and began to chase them in their vehicles. Lukenga's group tried to escape.
I think I remember seeing the CCTV footage that he showed earlier of them like walking with an axe
through the tight space. The vehicle soon came to a stop, with Ruddock and Richardson emerging to continue the chase, armed and on foot. Lukenga and his friends ran through a nearby garden, with local residents watching in terror as the pursuit continued. To clear a path, Richardson axed down a gate, which allowed Ruddock to catch up with Lukenga as he tried to climb a fence. Ruddock brandished a huge knife and stabbed his enemy, leaving him on the ground and running off into the night. The police were quickly called to the scene, and although they and the paramedics tried to save the young man, the stab wound had severed a vital artery, and he died before he could be transported to a hospital. Later that same day, Ruddock shared a video on
Yes, I remember seeing this. Holy shit, I remember seeing like this clip specifically from the Snapchat story, or whatever it's called. I don't think it's called story because that's of Instagram. But yeah, I just remember seeing like how dumb, not only like how fucked in the head you have to be to kill someone and immediately pull out your phone and put it on your Snapchat, but just how dumb. That's like such like clear black and white evidence that you killed the guy. You know, if there was a I'm sure he's gonna explain later the court case, but you don't really need any more evidence than just that video. Even though like he did censor his face, I'm sure you still find like his actual details when they count. But some people are just brain dead morons. I'm pretty sure it was because of the pride he got from just killing someone that made him, post it.
His face was covered by an emoji, and he openly bragged about stabbing the dead teenager, sounding proud of the murder. The police were already
I remember this
trail, and
in the UK. I was wondering because I for a second I saw he meant in the US.
Detective Chief Inspector Scott Griffiths later shared that they were able to find the killer by linking him to his associate Kyle Kinchin.
Now I look back on it, these guys probably aren't the smartest people in the world if they were willing to walk into a shop with an axe.
Had given Ruddock a motorcycle helmet on the day of the murder that could be seen in the footage. The killer's Snapchat post was the clincher. His blatant admission of guilt without any sign of remorse sealed his fate. Through witness statements and further detective work, the police eventually found the stolen motorcycle, some empty gas cans, and clothing that had been burned together, as well as an abandoned knife near the scene of the crime that matched the damage to Lukenga's clothing.
One thing I want to mention before we went past it, it's that I forgot to mention as well. There is no worse way to make a judge see you as guilty than by looking as if like you had no remorse for the person you just killed. Because then he has no point in like seeing you as somewhat. I mean, of course, judges see most killers as guilty, but they do try to look into like how they are mentally. And of course, if you show no sympathy to the person you killed, they're gonna give you like a much more stricter sentence.
From there, it was short work to locate the other men who had been with the killers that night: Matthew Brankin and Riley Madden. Kinchin and Madden were the only ones who were not convicted of arson and murder after a 6-week trial. The rest of the youths were sentenced to life in prison. Madden was only booked for handling stolen goods, and Kinchin was found not guilty. The violence that night sent ripples through the community, and the chilling video that Ruddock posted became a point of focus in the media. The fact that he was so willing to publicly share his crimes was unsettling to many, And this event remains a notable example of how Snapchat can be weaponized against a criminal just as easily as against a victim.
I don't think it was Snapchat. I think if he had any other app like Instagram, he would sort of like posted the video of him bragging about it. It's just a simple case of him just being brain dead.
One of Snapchat's most famous features is its tracking system, which can let users see the locations of their friends and family around the world as they share photos. But as with any service that publicly displays a person's real-time location, it's also very easy to abuse. Such was the case in Boynton Beach, Florida in January 2017, when the feature was used to plan and execute a violent home invasion, as well as to turn the tables on its perpetrators. Eric Crawford, a 20-year-old resident of the city, had been receiving threatening texts from a teenager named Connor Kilpatrick.
Those teenagers in these stories that do this shit.
With over Snapchat. Eric tried his best to shrug off the messages, but the 17-year-old foe delivered on his promises early into the new year. Kilpatrick and two friends forced their way into Crawford's home one day, attacking him brutally. They doused him in pepper spray, beat him with a large stick, and threatened him with a knife while they ransacked his home.
Oh my god. I'm guessing he still lived, because yeah, that was a video of him showing his wounds.
Before escaping. But their getaway was not as clean as they hoped. Crawford had recognized Kilpatrick right away, and although he called the police in the aftermath of the incident, he also began his own investigation. In the following days, Crawford tracked Kilpatrick's moves on Snapchat, waiting for him to show any evidence of his crime. Eventually, he got his wish when the thief posted a photo of himself with some of the stolen jewelry inside a Maserati. The picture had the—
Oh, what a dumbass. I was about to say, I'm glad that in this story, it was flipped so the victim could track down the actual criminal. Also, one thing that blew my mind about this Snapchat feature of them like showing where you are at all times, I'm pretty sure when it was first implemented on the app, it was automatically on, as opposed to like asking the user if they wanted to switch it on or off, which is what it was, because I hate the idea of everyone knowing where I am at all times, just because of a feature that wasn't even asked if I wanted to like keep on.
Caption, Stolo Lolo, which was as close to a confession as Crawford could get from a distance. He took a screenshot and
Stolo on the Lolo. Did they really prove to the judge that he was guilty by just saying the phrase Stolo on the Lolo?
Photo was stolen as well. From there, the police were able to track the vehicle to a Kmart in Boca Raton, where they found the three teenage suspects inside when they arrived. The teens tried to talk their way out of the situation, blaming the stolen car on another one of their friends, but they were still arrested. They were all later released on a $25,000 bond, with Kilpatrick's containing the condition of house arrest. This story proves that while snaps may disappear after they are seen, sometimes they can stick around long enough to do lasting damage.
That was the name, yeah, Snaps, not stories.
After Chloe Kroll met a man on Snapchat, their conversation began casually, but one day he made a surprising request. He asked if Chloe could send him $1,000, which he claimed he would be able to flip into a much larger amount. Although she later admitted that she found the request sketchy, Chloe agreed to send just $100 to start, warning her new friend
what's the point? If you find it sketchy, why would you try to like dip your toes into it?
Confirmed. Immediately after the man received the money, he blocked Chloe on all of social media and disappeared. But rather than sit with the loss, the woman decided to follow through on her warning and began to do a deep dive into social media to track down whoever was behind the account that had scammed her. Her search lasted deep into the night, and she eventually came across people who knew the criminal. All of them backed him up and tried to push Chloe off his trail, but she continued to dig. Eventually, she was able to track down a person who knew her scammer's surname, which led her to his extended family's online profiles. Searching through these mysterious relatives, she was soon able to get her hands on addresses and a phone number, which she used to reach out to a still unnamed relative of her scammer. This person, who kept her connection to the man private, told Chloe that their mutual contact had been stealing from everyone, including family, and that she had received messages about this behavior before. Chloe shared her plan to confront the man and retrieve her money, and his relative told her exactly where he would be. The real estate agent went directly to the scammer's front door. But when she knocked, his mother was the one who answered. As soon as Chloe introduced herself and explained the situation,
I wanted to say this. I have to respect her for like taking the time to actually track down who it was. But it's never a good idea to go to someone's house demanding for something, because you never, especially in America, you have no idea. I mean, I know how it's going to turn out, but I'm still waiting to let the story play out.
The older woman started to scream for her son, who came to the front door and was shocked to find his victim standing there. The women started to berate the young man together and were soon joined by his grandmother.
That's actually pretty funny. The video of all three women berating him. His mom, his grandmom, and some woman he scammed on Snapchat.
The scammer and his former victim came to an agreement. He would send the money back to her over Cash App.
Yes, Cash App, the most bullshit app ever.
Apologetic text message the next day. Chloe later shared her story with the world through TikTok, accumulating over 278,000 views and leaving many viewers impressed by her amateur detective work. Her story gave many people a platform to discuss their own similar experiences, and some commenters even asked if Chloe could help them recover the money they had lost. Although she never took any of them up on their offers, her story remains a strong example that scammers can sometimes bend as easily as their victims when they're pushed on the same personal level.
It's a very rare case because, he was a teenager, but most people, actually, I don't know. I feel like most scams on Snapchat would be by, grown-ass men who know what they're doing, as opposed to, just wimpy-ass teenagers that the second is a sign of, threat, they immediately, break down crying.
Among all of the stories about Snapchat discussed today, perhaps the strangest one is what happened to the app's founder. Reggie Brown came up with the initial idea for the platform while smoking weed with his fellow Stanford University undergraduates.
Wow, what a genius point of beginning to make an app.
Would make sexting even easier. He shared the idea with his friend Evan Spiegel, who also saw great potential in the concept. The two students soon brought Bobby Murphy, another classmate, on board to write the app's initial code. In the summer of 2011, the trio moved to Spiegel's father's home in Los Angeles to work on the project full-time, but tensions were already rising. While the three friends had been drawn together through college parties, Reggie was far more persistent in his debauchery, and his co-founders became concerned that his focus was shifting away from his work. Arguments began to break out more often among them, escalating to the point where Spiegel and Murphy eventually locked their partner out of Snapchat's accounts just months after the startup had launched. Despite this setback, with the person who came up with the concept, the app quickly took off and became a well-known social network. But in 2013, Brown sued Spiegel and Murphy, claiming that he rightfully owned 20% of the company. As the legal battle unfolded, it became clear that the relationship between the founders had degraded beyond repair.
I swear to God, that's the exact same setup for the one for Facebook. I mean, if you watch the what's it called, the documentary about Mark Zuckerberg, The Network, yeah, that was the one. I literally played that movie in my head as he was telling that story. It literally sounded beat by beat. I mean, I guess with apps that are popular today, they all started with a rocky beginning because it was much more easy to start. Therefore, it wasn't as formal as an actual business. Therefore, people behind the scenes could do whatever they wanted, kick people out if there was some shit between them.
In his deposition for the lawsuit, which was leaked to Business Insider, Spiegel said that he regretted inviting Brown into his house, and also the many chances that he had given his former business partner while they were trying to get Snapchat off the ground. In the end, the two dedicated founders felt that they were being scammed out of their hard-earned money by a person who did none of the hard work. Still, they did concede that Brown deserved some compensation for his contributions to the original idea. And in September of 2014, the company agreed to pay the ousted founder $157.5 million in a cash settlement. This deal included a gag order that banned Brown from even speaking publicly about the company. And later that month, Snapchat released a statement that acknowledged him as the one who had originally come up with the idea for the app's general functionality. However, this statement was buried in the tech news landscape, perhaps intentionally, as it was published immediately before Apple's iPhone 6 and Apple Watch launch event. After settling with Snapchat, Reggie Brown faded out of public view. But a few years later, with his newfound wealth, he would make headlines again after several run-ins with the police. The first of these incidents occurred in December of 2020 in the South Carolina gated community called Kings Grant, where the young man had been living for a couple of years. On December 10th, a security guard told local police that the former tech player had crashed a black Rolls-Royce SUV into the subdivision security gate. The officers who responded to the report left without speaking to Brown, but they would be back the very next day. Police returned to Kings Grant after one of Brown's neighbors complained about him allegedly driving another car recklessly through the private streets.
Jesus Christ. I'm guessing he was on drugs? With 150 million with a Rolls Royce, you probably would be on drugs as well.
Taking advantage of the building's pool, playground, and clubhouse. When an officer arrived at the scene, he found Reggie sitting in a Bentley outside the establishment.
And a Bentley as well? Fuck.
Windows after being asked. The officer reported that the young man had a quote, glassed over look on his face and dilated pupils. A man who was participating in the video shoot then approached the officer, trying to explain the situation. At this point, more locals began to approach the scene, including Brown's mother and the neighbor who had originally called the police. When he saw this neighbor, Reggie stepped out of his car and aggressively lunged at him, leading the officer to step between the men in order to keep them apart. According to his report, Brown allegedly swatted the cop's arms away, which prompted the officer to handcuff him. As this was unfolding, Reggie's father and more neighbors started to arrive on the scene, which continued to escalate to the point where the officers called for additional units to maintain control of the situation. When everyone got calmed down, Brown was asked to perform a field sobriety test, which he passed. The young man was handcuffed and released, with the crowd around him dispersing. It would be almost a year before his name was back in the news. In November 2021, police showed up at the door of Reggie's mansion in response to a new complaint from his neighbors. They claimed that the young man had been waging a long harassment crusade against them, which began when he damaged their lawn by driving his vehicle through it. He was also accused of shining his vehicle's headlights into their windows and setting off his car alarm in the middle of the night, seemingly just to—
How old is he, like 12? That's so fucking petty.
Alleged instances of Brown loudly making remarks about his neighbors outside their house to his family and friends. When he was informed of these accusations, Reggie denied them all. He responded to the officer with some allegations of his own, claiming that his neighbors had poured gasoline and oil onto his property's palm trees, which killed them. He told the policeman that he had video footage of these acts on his phone, but also refused to show them. According to the officer's report, the Snapchat co-founder allegedly added that his neighbor's actions could be considered domestic terrorism, and he was considering getting the FBI involved. The questioning ended when the officer informed Brown that the neighbors had asked him to stop contacting them, since the escalating aggression in his behavior had left them afraid for their well-being. The very same day, these accusers were proven right. Minutes after the first officer had left, Reggie reportedly walked onto his neighbor's property and started up the harassment yet again.
Oh, fucking hell, this guy.
Derogatory terms at him and his grandchildren, even grabbing his crotch in their direction. The verbal assault continued until the officer returned, where he found Brown yelling at his neighbors from the back window of his house. He tried to speak with the antagonist, but he reportedly refused to come to the door. 4 days later, 7 police officers arrived back at Brown's house with a warrant for his arrest for first-degree harassment. Once again, nobody answered the door, so the police went to the home of his parents, who lived nearby. Reggie's brother answered the door and allegedly told the officers that he had left South Carolina. His father arrived soon after and explained that Reggie had been dropped off at a mental health rehabilitation center outside of the state, to hopefully combat his unstable behavior. In the wake of this, the neighbors dropped the charges against Mr. Brown, and he has stayed out of—
That's pretty nice of them, especially after like how big of a dick he was to them.
More from Brown in the tech world again, as he has already effectively disappeared from it when Snapchat went public in 2017. As for the legal world, that remains to be seen. Reggie sold his house in January 2022 for just over $1 million, and his current whereabouts are unknown. Snapchat's other founders are now worth over $2 billion each, multiple times more than what they were shaken down for, and have kept the social media platform firmly in the mainstream. That success is not directly connected to Reggie Brown's early ousting from the company, But if he had stayed on board, the app may have not been able to reach the same heights.
That's
And there
true.
you have a few of the most
That was a good
dysfunctional...
video. Yeah, he would have definitely been dead weight. I mean, he would have probably been doing the same shit in the Snapchat offices as he was like back at home, just yelling at people for random shit. But my question is, was he like that mentally unstable before the $150 million? Because some people are like completely fine, but the second they get that much money, it does get you to the head. Well, it doesn't get you to the head like egotistically, but it does like fuck them over because they start buying like random shit. He did mention like a lot of nice shit, like all that stock footage of like his house or like the neighborhood where he lived overhead like a bird's eye view. It looked really nice, and a Bentley as well that he mentioned driving over, like crashing as well. Like that part was just crazy. But it's funny as well to me that he got that much money simply by like conceiving an idea. I might have got some details wrong because it was kind of like I'm really shit at these kind of like stories because some parts just like go through one ear and out the other, so I miss some parts and it becomes like a completely different story in my head. But if that is like the actual case, then that's just insane to me. I mean, I guess in court it's like really hard to prove whose idea it is, so whoever comes up first and says like they came up with the idea, they kind of like already seen as like telling the truth. Therefore, I'm guessing the people who now own Snapchat were forced to give him that much money, which is still insane to me. And I'm sure a bunch of other apps have had that kind of background. And so far, to be honest, I've always seen Snapchat as like the lesser quality of all the other apps. I mean, this video just showed a bunch of stories, and although most of these could have happened on any other app, Snapchat does feel like the breeding ground of it that caused in the first place. But overall, in this video, it did have like a really depressing start in the beginning, but there were some stories that were just actually interesting, like the last one. And that story in the middle as well that was in the UK, that was so mind-blowing to me. The idea of someone being that dumb of recording themselves of paying someone after, Jesus Christ, you have to be fucking dumb to actually do that.
The overgrown pretty boy, you ended like this. Like Mary J. Blige, you indeed I reminisce upon the days when we